Dr. Zhao Wang, Antarctica, 1998. The flat and pristine white landscape stretched far into the endless horizon, seemingly going on to the end of time. For over a century, the untamed continent had been the last great frontier. Despite humanity's best efforts, this frozen wasteland has proven impossible to conquer, providing only a narrow window for exploration and scientific research. Except for colonies of penguins, there was no other life to be found on the surface beyond the tiny handful of scientists scrambling to unlock the secrets of the world's largest desert. Magnificent, isn't it? Dr. Zhao Wang said. His colleague, Dr. Bo Chen, refused to agree as he shivered despite the thermal insulated Arctic gear he wore. There was no denying how cold it was as the harsh whistling of the wind blew across the featureless terrain. Even though it was summer, 560 kilometers inland of the Ross Sea, it was 14 below zero with wind gusts up to 40 miles an hour. None of this mattered to Dr. Wang. "I'll be happier once we find what we're looking for," Chen said. Dr. Wang couldn't help but chuckle. "Where's your sense of adventure?" he asked. "Back in Beijing, eating my mother's cooking. That is as adventurous as I typically get," Cheng answered. Wang laughed harder, which hurt a little bit as the bitterly cold air filled his lungs. "Well, you're here now. Come on, discovery awaits us." "I can feel that we're close," Wang said, urging his partner forward. "Close to what?" "The future," Wang shouted, already pushing ahead, dragging a sled filled with supplies behind him. The two scientists, both working for the Chinese National Space Administration, had come to Antarctica to find meteorites. While the space rocks fell all over the planet, most descending into the oceans or disintegrating in the atmosphere, here among the featureless landscapes, pristine white, the black rocks stood out like a blot. However, the pickings were slim. For decades, Western scientists came here, furthering their research by collecting tens of thousands of meteorites that Dr. Wang had to venture deeper into the unknown to find decent specimens. So far, he and Dr. Chen had collected just over a ton of material, which should have been enough. However, his gut told him something important. The discovery of a lifetime had to be nearby. "We shouldn't stay out here longer than an hour. It's getting colder, and I would like to get back to camp before my fingers freeze off," Dr. Chen said. Dr. Chen was not even out of diapers when man first landed on the moon. 2 years out of college, after earning his master's, he did not share Dr. Wang's heavenly view of the universe, and saw the work they must do as being more tiresome than necessary. He was a good man nonetheless, who put in far more hours than any dozen other young astronomers he'd worked with. Nevertheless, it was clear from the moment they set down on this continent that Dr. Chen was far more comfortable looking at the stars through a telescope than doing actual field work. Not Wang. He still fondly remembered his time at Cambridge, while in his first semester at King's College, gazing up at the sky every night as Apollo 11 journeyed to the closest celestial object humanity would ever set foot on. He dreamed of being up there someday, when visions of lunar bases and international cooperation would encourage nations to put aside their petty differences and work together for the betterment of all humanity. While that dream would never come to pass as the Americans had given up on the moon, Wang never grew to become bitter and resentful like so many of his colleagues. All that man needed was something grand to help remind them how small and insignificant we were among the greater cosmoses. Dr. Wang did not take his colleagues' advice. They continued for another 2 hours as the temperature dropped another 25 degrees. "Maybe we should try and head more to the west," Dr. Wang said. He stopped, pulling out a pair of binoculars, and studied the horizon, looking for something that did not belong. Sadly, he only saw ice below a bright blue sky. "Doctor, I think we should start to head—" Dr. Cheng's words were cut short as the ice beneath his feet gave way. With a wailing scream, he disappeared beneath the surface. "Bo!" Dr. Wang rushed over to where Chen had fallen, seeing a deep fissure where the thin sheet of ice had been. Thankfully, it seemed that the ice below dropped at a slight angle and not straight down. "Bo, can you hear me?" "I can hear you!" a faint voice called back. "Are you okay?" Wang asked. "I think so. Nothing is broken," Chen replied. "Stay put. I'll get you out of there," Wang said. Dr. Wang, I think maybe you might want to come down here. There's something you should see," Cheng said. What is it? I think I might have found your golden goose, Chen replied. Hold on. Do not move. I'll be right there, Wang called back. Dr. Wang acted against his better judgment and went down the hole. His priority should be to get Chen back to the surface regardless of what he found. But curiosity got the better of him as he carefully lowered himself. The fissure opened into a narrow cave with deep depressions indicating to Wang that something had fallen here, a meteorite long ago, and had formed a shallow crater. Once he was on firm ground, Dr. Wang ignited a torch which lit the whole area in a brilliant red hue. He saw Dr. Chen as the man was standing near the center of the crater, looking down at something. Bo, are you okay? I'm fine, but look at this, Doctor. It's amazing. My word, Wang gasped. Both men stared at a large meteorite, solid black and a diameter of 3.5 feet, half of it lodged in the ice, the rest exposed. Doctor, wait! Chen said. Wang pulled his hand back as he glanced down at what his colleague was pointing to. It looks like small veins bonding with the ice, Dr. Wang said. This is impossible, he added. Tiny tubes barely the size of human hair spread out from the meteorite base, digging through the ice as if it were a tree grasping for a firm perch. Wang took out a pen from his pocket and touched the hairs, pulling one up like a piece of spaghetti, where it disintegrated into nothing once severed from the body of the meteorite. How can that be? Dr. Chen asked. The answer mankind has been asking since we first looked up at the stars, and that is? Are we alone in the universe? Wang answered. Come on, help me dig it out from the ice. We have to get this back to camp. Are you certain this is safe? It is much larger than the other pieces we found, Chen said. I don't care about the other specimens right now. This meteorite could be the discovery of a lifetime. Wang stopped and looked up at Chen with teary eyes. This could be the greatest discovery in the history of man. Imagine what this could mean, not just for you and me, but for the whole world. I'm not leaving this place without it. Doctor, we don't even know what this thing is. A meteorite, sure, but I don't have a good feeling about this. I think we should go back and get the rest of the team together before we come back for this thing. Examine it here to make sure it's safe to move, Chen pleaded. It was no use, as Wang went back to his hacking, breaking away large chunks of ice. With each blow, more and more of the follicles disintegrated until only the black rock remained. Help me. I can't get this back to the surface on my own, Dr. Wang said. He began to wrap the meteorite in a thermal blanket, tying it secure so it might be easier to move. When Dr. Chen bent down to help him, he was surprised by how heavy it was. Must have an iron core. Would explain how so much of it survived entry, Dr. Wang said through gritted teeth. Wang tied a rope around the rock, looping it several times before he was sure it was secure. You go up first and pull the meteorite up, Wang said. Me? Why? Chen asked. Because you're younger and stronger than I, Wang replied honestly. If you say so. Dr. Chen did as he was asked. He attached a screw-lock climbing ring to the rope and carefully began to make his way up the slope. The trek upward was far slower than his descent, and not nearly as enjoyable, he thought to himself. After 15 minutes, the brisk, cold air struck Chen, only now making him realize how much more comfortable it was down below. I'm up top, Chen said. Okay, begin to pull the meteorite up, but be incredibly careful, Dr. Wang called back. Be careful? It is a million-year-old rock that likely traveled thousands of light years. I doubt I could scratch the damn thing even if I wanted to, Chen mumbled. Gan! This beast is heavy, Dr. Chen cursed as he pulled, digging his spiked boots into the ice as he jerked the rope with all his strength. That's it! Keep that pace! Dr. Wang said from below. Beads of sweat began to drizzle from under Dr. Chen's cap as he struggled to keep his grip on the rope. Finally, after several grueling minutes, the meteorite reached the surface, sliding into place as Chen collapsed, breathing heavily from exertion. Dr. Chen eventually got up and walked over to the gorge and dropped to his hands and knees, staring down into the darkness. Dr. Wang? Are you able to get back up on your own? Or should I come down and help you? Chang asked. I can manage. Just prepare the sample for transportation. It is starting to get cold up here. Relatively speaking, of course, and the wind's stronger. We shouldn't risk the walk back to base camp just yet, Chen warned. Wait until I get up there. In the meantime, do as I say. Sighing deeply, Dr. Chen walked over to where their supplies were. He grabbed some small ski tracks that would fit under the meteorite, making transportation more manageable. We have 50 perfectly good samples back at camp to take home, and you want the haunted, glowing rock with hairs growing out of it to play with, Chen complained as he worked. Is it ready to move? Wang asked. It is, but Doctor, the weather, Chen said. Dr. Wang stood erect and sniffed the air, as if he possessed some extraordinary sense to detect the slightest change in the climate. You might be right. I won't risk it. Let us get the tent set up for the night. We both need much-deserved rest, Wang said. 4 hours later, the sun had not gone down, or would it for several more weeks. Nevertheless, it was much colder than it had been, as the wind blew violently. Now, the two scientists sat around a portable stove cooking their evening meal freeze-dried wonton soup. Not like Mother used to make, but not half bad for something that came out of a vacuum-sealed bag, Dr. Chen said. He tasted the soup, enjoying the aroma as it swirled around the tent. Your bowl, Doctor, Chen said, with an outstretched hand. Dr. Wang did not seem to hear him. He was too deep in his thoughts as he wrote in his leather-bound journal, as he typically did every night. Tonight, however, he filled half a dozen pages with notes while sketching out a rough image of the meteorite they had found at the bottom of the fissure. Doctor, Chen said again, nudging his colleague with his bowl of soup. Oh, I'm sorry. I was deep in thought, Wang said. Well, it has been an eventful day, Chen replied. Chen dipped the spoon into the pot and filled his bowl to the top. Bringing the dish to his nose, he took a deep breath before inhaling the mixture filled with vegetables, dumplings, and broth. Wang, on the other hand, took a single sip from his bowl and put it down as he went back to his notebook and quickly jotted down another paragraph. Do you think it is more than just another rock? Chen asked. You saw what I saw, Wang replied, not lifting his head as he wrote. Yeah, but those hairs might have been native. Perhaps some sort of fungus, Chen said. Don't be silly. Nothing can live out here for too long, Wang said. Laughing uneasy, Chen said, Little green men then? I would not dare presume. But you are thinking about it, Chen asked. Wang placed down his pencil and closed his journal. He looked over at his colleague, seeing the uneasiness in his eyes. The Americans have been here hundreds of times. As far as I know, they've found similar rocks. But if they haven't, I feel this piece might be significant, not just for China, but also for the whole world. So yes, I feel it might very well be little green men, Wang said. We have to be rational about this, Doctor. Of course. We'll do tests back at camp to determine what makes this specimen special and forward the data back to our lab in Beijing for further analysis. But just imagine, my dear young friend, the two of us might be sitting feet from the greatest discovery in human history. Or just another black rock, Chen said. Or just another black rock. But my gut tells me this is part of our destiny. The Pangu meteorite will change everything if we are proven right about what we witnessed back there, Wang said. Pangu meteorite? Chen asked. Yes, it seems appropriate, Wang said. I'm not sure I see it the way you do, Doctor. Chaos, creation, a cosmic egg? Chen asked. This is just the beginning, my friend. Where once we knew nothing, the mysteries of the universe shall be revealed in time. 2 weeks later, Dr. Wang carefully took the next sample from the Pangu meteorite, drilled from the rock's core. He dropped it into a petri dish and set it under a microscope. Simply amazing, he said under his breath. I still wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it with my own eyes, Dr. Chen said. He stood with 4 other researchers staring at a TV monitor that showed what the microscope revealed. How old is the rock again? Chen asked. 4.8 billion years old. Give or take a few millennia, Wang answered. That is older than our solar system, Cheng said. Radiometric dating indicates the meteorite fell to Earth in the 1700s. One of Wang's assistants spoke. That's too long for something on this scale to have lived in the ice, Chen said. They were frozen. Maybe it just needed time to thaw, another assistant mentioned. The only problem is, we never thawed the rock. It has been kept at the same temperature as we found it, with little variation, Chen said. Dr. Chen turned to Wang as he carefully studied the monitor, watching as billions of tiny organisms swam about in the petri dish. Has there been any word from Dr. Vargas yet? Chen asked. Dr. Wang rubbed his eyes as he pulled away from the microscope. I had to send the request to Beijing for approval to reach out to a foreign agency. I told them of the importance, but 4 days, and so far, no word, Wang replied. Sorry to say, Doctor, but I don't think we need an expert to tell us what all of us already know. You found the first confirmed life outside our planet, Chen said. Since the first samples were taken from the meteorite and put under a microscope, a whole new world of understanding was opened, not to mention countless questions about what exactly they were looking at. Dr. Wang laughed. I appreciate the excitement. However, I would like to avoid making the same mistakes the researchers who found ALH 84001 made. I want no room for debate as to what we've discovered. Oh, I think there will be plenty of debate, Doctor, Chen said. This could cause everyone on the planet to question humanity's place in the universe. This might affect religion, philosophy, or even the origin of life on our planet. I am sorry, Dr. Wang, that I ever doubted you while we were out there. You were right. These past few weeks have been the most amazing adventure. Dr. Chen swore he could detect a hint of a tear welling up in the corner of Wang's eye. Everyone in the room agreed and offered their encouragement, all grateful to be given a chance to be a part of this. It was then that everyone's attention was pulled away from the TV monitor and directed outside as they heard what sounded like a large helicopter approaching their facility. What in the world? Dr. Wang said, and quickly made his way over to the hatch. Dr. Chen followed as both men grabbed their coats and headed outside, where they promptly saw a pair of military Cheng Z-8 transport helicopters coming toward their camp before landing. We weren't expecting a resupply, right? Cheng asked. Not for another week, Wang replied. The older doctor looked worried, almost sensing whoever was about to come out of that bird was not bringing with them any good news. The moment the rotors stopped, the rear hatch to both choppers opened and allowed 24 Chinese soldiers out. A pair of soldiers moved aggressively toward Dr. Wang and Chen, their weapons held low and fingers off the trigger. But it hardly mattered as the two men quickly threw up their hands. Whoa, whoa, whoa! What the hell is going on here? Dr. Chen asked. Dr. Zhao Wang and Dr. Bo Chen. I am General Fei Li. I'm here on orders from Beijing to look at your Pangu meteorite, if you please. The officer who led the soldiers said as he approached behind his men. Do I have a choice? Dr. Wang asked. Oh, dear doctor, we all have choices. You may not like the outcome, however. Li answered, his voice calm yet commanding. And please, lower your hands. We are all countrymen here, he added. Both Wang and Chen were apprehensive. Nonetheless, they did as they were told. Please, follow me inside, Wang said. How do you know he is telling the truth, or even who he says he is? Dr. Chen said quietly. I don't believe we are in the position to argue with him, Dr. Wang replied. As Dr. Wang led the party inside, he immediately saw the sudden fear and uncertainty on his team's faces. Quickly, he spoke loudly. Please, everyone, we are hosting guests who have come a very long way to see for themselves our discovery. General Li, this is my research staff. A pleasure to meet all of you. I have read each of your files, the brightest minds our country has to offer. Dr. Wang has chosen his team well, and your government is thankful for your service. General Li said, sounding like a showman as his soldiers moved swiftly around the lab, taking positions around Wang's staff. Dr. Wang moved over to his workstation, with Li right behind him. As you can see, the samples are highly active and seem to be reproducing fairly quickly, Wang said. And these samples come from inside the meteorite? General Li asked. They do, Wang answered. Are you certain they're not terrestrial? Li asked. Absolutely, Wang said. However, I do think I should point out something important. While this appears to be a complex life form, if I had to guess, I think it draws a lot of similarities to a virus, Wang added. Yes, your colleagues back in Beijing have testified to that, which is why I'm here, Li said. He had an odd kind of smile on his face that made Dr. Wang's skin begin to crawl. General? Wang asked. Chairman Z has ordered all of your research and the meteorite to be placed under direct control of the People's Liberation Army. Effective immediately, Lee said. Military control? This research is ours! It belongs to the CNSA, Dr. Chang said. He foolishly rushed forward, but could not get further than 2 steps before one of the soldiers rammed the butt of his rifle into the doctor's gut. General, that was uncalled for! Apologies. I have my orders, which I will be carrying out despite the protest of your team, Lee said. I don't think you understand. While this finding is groundbreaking, it is potentially hazardous. If my data is correct, what we are looking at might be the most virulent life form ever discovered. Dr. Wang stepped closer to General Lee, wanting to make sure every word he spoke was understood. General, this thing has survived not only the harshest climate on our planet for hundreds of years, but it has also endured for billions of years in the vacuum of space, where it was exposed to unimaginable levels of radiation. Yet, it still survived. This is not something that we should keep to ourselves or treat lightly. To be frank, we aren't technologically advanced enough to understand this thing without outside help. Even then, it might take decades before we begin to scratch the surface of what this discovery means. The only thing that matters, Doctor, is... what did you name it, Pangu? Might be the greatest weapon our nation can ever hope to possess. One that can very well tip the balance of power, Lee said. He instructed his men to begin collecting all of Wang's research and the meteorite itself, pushing the staff into the corner where they could not interfere. A weapon? Are you a madman? Didn't you listen to a word Dr. Wang said? This thing is a menace! The genetic material inside the capsid alone is far more complex and larger than even the most dangerous virus found on Earth. And that means? Lee asked, not caring. This means it holds within it the potential and adapts to anything it comes in contact with. If mishandled, it could mean the end of... well, everything, Chen answered. Which is why it should be in the hands of the PLA, Lee said callously. No! You can't do this! Chen said. The young doctor bolted, rising to his feet as he surged towards General Lee. However, before he could reach the man, the general pulled out a pistol and fired once. Dr. Chen stumbled forward, a look of disbelief on his face as he pulled his hand away from his chest. With one final breath, Chen collapsed to the ground, falling to his knees before landing on the floor. A pool of bright crimson quickly began to form under him and spread as several of his colleagues began to wail uncontrollably. Damn you! Dr. Wang said. He rushed over to Chen and knelt, rolling the younger man over onto his back. Chen's eyes were open, but there was no life left in them. You didn't have to do this! Dr. Wang said. Yes, quite unfortunate. Dr. Chen was a promising astronomer. I would advise, next time you control your people better, Lee said. He holstered his weapon and turned back as his soldiers began packing all of Dr. Wang's work. What about the rest of my team? Are you going to kill us too? Wang asked. Please, what do you take me for? We're all countrymen here, Dr. Wang. But do not fear, you will still get to work with your rock and unlock all its secrets. I won't help you turn it into a weapon, Wang said defiantly. Lee grabbed Wang and lifted him back to his feet. Pulling the older man closer to him, he spoke in a low and intimidating voice. You will. For their sake. Wang glanced over at his team. All of them were held at gunpoint. Each one stood frozen with fear, holding one another as they worried if they were next to be killed. Looking back at Lee, Wang said, I will do as you ask. Just don't hurt anyone else. Very good. Gather all your research and help my men load it into our choppers. I expect everything to be done within the next hour. As you say. Wang said in a low voice. Turning to his colleagues, he said to all of them, Please, help the general and his men. They hesitated for a moment, but soon did as asked. I need to transfer the data we have to a secure drive. I wouldn't trust that your men know how to do that without damaging my data. Of course. Do whatever needs to be done. Wang quietly walked over to his computer, glancing back as Dr. Chen's body was lifted by two soldiers and taken outside. He sat and began to work quickly on his computer, doing what he was asked. But when no one was looking, grabbed a small file that he had readied to send to another colleague in South Korea. It was his only hope of getting what was discovered out to the world. He feared if the Pangu meteorite remained a secret, it might very well have terrible consequences for the world. With the attached file that only covered the most basic information about the meteorite and its early findings, Dr. Wang wrote a simple message. I hope you know what to do before it is too late. He clicked send as General Lee stepped over to him. Is everything going well, Doctor? Yes, I'm nearly finished transferring the files. Good. Do be thorough. We wouldn't want to leave anything behind. Of course, Wang replied. Less than an hour later, Dr. Wang rode in the military helicopter, looking out the port window at his abandoned base. With him in the same chopper was his research team. Lying between them on the floor, put into a body bag, was Dr. Chen, which everyone tried not to look down at. Wang wondered what a terrible future might be in store for him, and if his friend in Korea would understand his message and do the right thing. If not, he worried what his discovery would mean for the world. Not soon, but much further down the road. He knew if humanity wasn't prepared, the Pangu meteorite had trapped within it the power to reshape the world. That fact frightened him that he wished he'd never found the damn thing.